What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and this one wants to do some in-depth technical analysis on SPY and break down some very important levels. I'm also going to talk about some important retracement levels that have played out, and then talk about how SPY can end up moving over the next couple of weeks, because we have some very interesting confluences that are developing on the charts. Before I do anything like this, though, let me just mention a few things. I am personally not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed up to 5 free stocks. Now, this offer ends in just one day, it ends tomorrow, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's break down what's going on with the market so far. Anyways, I'm going to be using TradingView for this video. I'm going to be talking about SPY and then talk about how this is looking so far. Looking at SPY, you will notice that we had this head and shoulders like pattern that was evident over the last few months. This did play out for the most part, but it does not have to guarantee we're going to just be crashing all the way down to the low 400s or even the 300s. That does not have to be guaranteed. Now, since this thing was playing out sometime like early during last week, we saw the market basically form this temporary bottom very close to this 420 area and started to uptrend quite a bit for quite some time. And then in doing so, we got a big rejection very recently on Thursday as the market started to sell off after we saw a big adjustment being made to the bond auctions, not to mention some technical developments that formed on the charts and the new inflationary expectations. So with all this data coming out, the market started to sell off even more. And this is starting to resemble a possible bull flag that could be forming, assuming that it's starting from right here, because you could be interpreting this very differently. But from this perspective, I just want to mention that what's very hard to predict is whether or not SPY is going to be making a new low during this drop, or if we're about to establish a higher low, because this whole thing is like a bullish structure. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you look at seasonality, right, we're basically during this period, we're between October/November. And during this October period, the market tends to see some downside during the third week after pushing during the first few weeks of October. So October started, the market kind of dropped a little bit, which is what happened during the first few days. Then the market started to rally for almost 2 weeks. It was more like a week and a half, if anything. And that is what tends to happen historically, right? Then we tend to see another sell off. So we either establish higher low, a higher low before we start pushing, or we establish a lower low before we end up getting the bounce. So it's a little tricky to predict exactly how this is going to look. But the bottom line is, either way, it looks like the market is in a bottoming process. And very soon there could be a bounce coming for November and December. I also talked about this yesterday about the monthly on SPY, right? The cup and handle. I already discussed this. So if you want more information about this, just watch my video from yesterday. But there's even more we could do, at least for the shorter term, because we're not too worried about whether or not this is going to bounce, for the long term. I'm going to talk more about the shorter term. I'm going to talk more about like the next week. What could be going on with SPY? Something very interesting is developing. So if you're going to look at this from an Elliott wave perspective, right, what you could do is you could draw out these waves very easily. This right here, this long drop that we got since the very beginning of August could be like wave one. This push up we got going into like the very end of August was wave two. This September, crash, if you want to call it that, or September pullback we got could be wave three. And we just experienced a possible wave four. Right? We were talking about this about a week and a half ago. And then wave five could be forming if we're going to make a new low. Wave 5 could be forming somewhere down here, and I will talk about that in just a few minutes. For me personally, I already used like a Fibonacci retracement to calculate these guys. That's why I'm not going to show you every little detail. But if we do make a new low, it could be around 416 or maybe like 411, which is a possibility. But we have to break through so many different support levels, and we need to see some bad news come out. We're going to need something big to happen for us to crash that hard, to see a really big drop for the final bottom of this period before the markets begins to bounce, start pushing up for the November period. So I just want to mention that, it all depends on whether or not we get some kind of bad catalyst, bad earnings from Apple, who knows, right? We need some bad news to cause the market to actually sink before the market starts to just like bounce and make its way back up as we approach the later months. So I want to be as honest as possible. This is like what the most likely scenario would look like, us turning bullish for November/December and making our way back up to these extremely high levels for December. So I'm still leaning in that direction, but I want to be as honest as possible. Now, what if we don't make a new low? That's like the only question. I don't know for sure if we will. If we're not going to make a new low, we have a very critical level that's approaching, and you can actually calculate this by using a Fibonacci retracement. So one of the simple ways of doing this would be, and just to assume this line is here, guys, because I already said many times I think the market is going to likely pump for the end of the year. But regardless of that, looking at this, you guys will notice something very interesting. We could take a Fibonacci retracement tool, and you could actually start like down here. And when you draw this out, right, using these mathematical computations, you will notice that the 0.786 retracement, right? It's a little hard to see. I'm sorry about that. Let me try to make this a little bigger. I think I could do this. It doesn't really matter, but the point I'm trying to make is these trend lines, I can't really change the size. I'm sorry about that. It doesn't matter. So right here, okay, guys, right here, we have our 0.786 retracement down here. We have the 0.618 retracement. So the 0.618 retracement, this 427 area aligns very closely to this imbalance, and it aligns with this historical support. So I have this trend line right here, this green trend line that's running here. This is historical support, and it happens to be intersecting with the Fibonacci retracement. We also have the 0.786 at 424, so we'll see about that. But here's the interesting thing. When you go back on the chart, all right, you will notice that we basically have this important support that was connected to the October low that we made from 2022, right? October, when we had the big sell-off before the market started to rally. So if we end up retesting that trend line, that's going to be a very key level. And it happens to intersect with the 0.618 retracement. And I find that very interesting. So there's a possibility, okay, that we're not going to make a new low, that the market is just going to like drop here, this 427 area going into like Tuesday or so. And this is where the bottom could end up being if we do establish a higher low. And then, the market could just start continuing to push as time goes on. And then as we hit November, we start just like uptrending once again and start really rallying as we approach November/December, right? So that's another possibility. So I don't really know what it's going to be. And the way to determine that, whether we're going to go to a new low or not, is do we hold this green trend line? If we lose this support right here at 427, 425 is going to be a key imbalance. I mean, if we lose that, we're going to come all the way down to these low levels, most likely, back again for another retest. But this is going to be a very important test, and we just happen to be intersecting with the 0.618 retracement. So I find that very interesting. I will see if that ends up playing out as the days go on. We're going to be watching that. And with that said, I mean, this is the most likely possibility that we're going to be testing this. I don't know if we're going to bounce here or not, or if we end up just like ultimately coming down to these lower levels before getting some kind of bounce. It's all possible. Elliott wave does suggest we may break it to a new low, and that we could see, something really bad happen on the news, leading to like this, low that ended up playing out, right? The green scenario and also like the red one, these could play out if we get some kind of like really bad piece of news. But for all I know, another way of looking at this would be, the market is maybe not bearish overall. It is temporarily bearish, but we're forming a much larger bullish structure because of a potential bull flag that's forming. So yes, we can drop like a little bit more like this within this bull flag. And then as time goes on, maybe it's going to like remain like this. And SPY kind of does something like this where we just, we've been selling off quite a bit, and we just continue to sell off for another, a couple of days. Maybe it lasts a little bit longer. Who knows? Who knows if we drop down to these lower levels or not? But if we do, and then what if we get like a breakout all of a sudden towards the end of October and we just start to rally? And this is our breakout, and we get a bullish break. And this whole thing is forming like a bull flag, similar to this right here. I actually have a picture for you guys. So we have like the flagpole, the flag within the channel, and the breakout. What if that's what's forming right here, and we're about to get like some kind of breakout later on? So this whole structure could still be bullish, but we could just be temporarily bearish, just developing this kind of structure, right? That's one possibility. Maybe it's only like I don't really know exactly where it's going to be, but these are just some possibilities. But the point I'm trying to make, guys, is as long as there isn't like a super bad piece of news, some kind of like new pandemic, new black swan events, the market is likely going to rally towards November and December. I'm calling it right now. On top of that, I just want to mention that as time goes on, for the short term, yes, it is possible there's more downside, but but with this downside potentially forming, this could be establishing something that's even more bullish as time goes on, right? And you could also like measure the flag and then the flag pole for the full measured move. I didn't really do that because I don't really have to do that. But the point still stays the same, that there's upside coming within the next like 4 weeks, 3, 4 weeks, going into December and etc. For the short term, there's likely downside coming. We could drop a little bit more, but we're going to be watching this channel. We're going to be watching to see where this tries to bottom and how it ends up reacting to this critical line right here, this green trend line. That's going to be key going into the next, trading session, the next few trading sessions. This giant green trend line that's been holding the market up for many, many months, that is going to be key. So we're going to be watching all of this. When it comes to Tesla, I just wanted to mention that Tesla's also trying to hold up. Now, Tesla's looking like it's a bit more bearish right now. We could just delete these scenarios. I actually made this kind of messy, guys. I'm sorry about that. So I want to clean this up a little bit. And Tesla's looking even weaker than before now. So it's actually breaking this low, continuing to downtrend. So looking at Tesla, I just wanted to call out that we have a potential bearish structure on the Tesla. We're barely holding this 250 support. But this imbalance down here could take Tesla all the way down into the 247 area. So it still looks a bit more bearish. It's going to likely try to rebound a little bit, and we're going to see how it reacts to this resistance. So it could just rebound a bit and just start failing and dropping a little bit more. And if this remains bearish approaching its earnings, this could be very interesting. Earnings are going to be key for this. And the most important thing is going to be its guidance. Do we get some kind of strong guidance, or do we end up failing? That we are going to find out, as time goes on. You could also argue that Tesla has a possible bearish-looking head and shoulders developing, like a much larger one. Let me just show you what it could look like. You could argue that Tesla has this potentially coming, like we get a rebound because of earnings. It starts to like pump, and then this could just be like a right shoulder that's forming. So maybe this is like a breakout, a false breakout before earnings. And then, it starts sinking down like this for the head and shoulders. That could be another possibility. And Tesla just continues to sink down a little bit more before we get a bullish breakout. Whoops, sorry about that, guys. As we approach like the November period before this thing bounces. So that's like another possibility I would keep in the back of my mind to see if we get some kind of like false breakouts before earnings. And then we'll see what earnings causes, guys. I obviously can't predict exactly what's going to happen during earnings, but for now, Tesla has been looking kind of weak. So we need to see this break in order to get that scenario where we could be forming like a right shoulder. But we have to break this area first, this important resistance. So if we reject off here like this, we could like continue to downtrend. If we continue to sell off like really hard going into earnings, then we could see a big bounce afterwards. But we'll have to wait and see on that. But for now, the structure is looking a little bit more bearish, and I was just drawing out another possibility, like the bullish case of us kind of like getting a breakout. The bearish case would be Tesla just continues to sell off like this, and we just approach these imbalances towards this 245 area. The first one's actually right here at 247, so I do see Tesla potentially testing this. Maybe it rebounds a little bit, then just rejects and comes down. So watch that 250 area. I could see 247 soon on Tesla if that breaks, and there's a good chance of that happening. Lastly, guys, I just want to talk about the QQQ in a little bit more detail. I know a lot of you guys are very interested in it. QQQ, we got the break to the downside after getting that failed breakout. QQQ could also be forming a potential bull flag, but We're going to be watching to see how this thing tries to hold up over the next couple of trading sessions. And we're going to be watching these very important support zones, like right about here. You could draw it out like more symmetrically if you want. I mean, it doesn't really matter, at least for the time being. We're going to be looking for a little rebound before this thing continues lower, but this could be forming a much larger like bull flag. So we basically had this like move to the downside. Maybe we kind of like rebound like this, continue lower just temporarily, and then as time goes on, we just try to make a breakout. This could also play out for the QQQ as it tends to be very resilient. But whether or not this gets a breakout or not will depend on Tesla. It's going to depend on NVIDIA, all these different earnings on Apple. So we're going to be waiting to see how that ends up unfolding. But I do believe, and here's my bottom line, NVIDIA could drop a little bit more. Not NVIDIA, sorry, the QQQ could drop more. But when you look at right here, I'm going to pull up something very interesting. So if you actually look at, if we go on to like the much larger time frames, you're going to notice something very interesting. So I'm going to go over to the QQQ on the monthly, and here's what I was trying to look for. It's like the same as SPY basically. It's a cup and handle that's also forming on the QQQ. So the QQQ is going to likely get a bullish breakout for November/December. As of right now, this is a cup and handle. It's still developing. It does not have to be perfectly symmetrical. So, yes, we're retracing after so much upside we saw between March through July. This is a very healthy retracement. But I believe the bulls will be back and they're going to be pushing this thing really, really hard very soon. So I still lean in that direction, guys. My opinions haven't really changed. I haven't really flip-flopped. I'm still holding the same views. Short term, yes, we could be bearish. Medium term, November and December, I'm leaning more bullish. Nothing has changed. All right, anyways, that's what I have for this video. Hopefully this video was kind of insightful for people out there. Maybe this was like very helpful for people new to technical analysis. So I thank you for listening. Have a great week, and I'll see you guys in the next one.